Benvenuti a un altro episodio di Thanks Lab TV. Questa settimana ci dedicheremo al Piaggio Ciao Super Comfort. Aspetta, perché parlo in questa maniera?
All right, welcome back to another episode of Tank Slap TV. This week we are going to be working on my buddy Brad's 1972 Piaggio Vespa Ciao 49 cc's of Fury. Really don't know much about it. Never worked on one before, but it's two-stroke, 50 cc's. Should be pretty simple. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot to it. So, while I kind of make a game plan and try and figure out what we're going to do, got a little something for you. What if one of the simplest machines ever built could become one of the most iconic? Today, we're diving into the story of the Piaggio Ciao, a tiny two-wheeled legend that helped define an entire generation of mobility. The Piaggio Ciao first rolled onto the scene in 1967, debuting at the Geneva Fair in Italy. At a time when affordable transportation was in high demand, Piaggio delivered something brilliantly simple, a motorized vehicle that almost anyone could use. And people did. The Ciao stayed in production all the way until 2006, nearly 4 decades. Over 3.5 million units were produced, making it one of the longest running and most successful mopeds ever built. The Ciao was manufactured by Piaggio, one of Italy's most historic vehicle companies. Production was centered in Pontedera, Tuscany, Italy, home of Piaggio's main factory since post-World War II era. This facility is legendary in two-wheeled world. It's the same birthplace as the famous Vespa scooter, and it became a hub of innovation for lightweight transportation. Pontedera wasn't just a factory, it was the heart of a movement that brought affordable mobility to millions. At first glance, the Ciao looks more like a bicycle than a motorcycle, and that's exactly the point. It featured a lightweight step-through frame, pedals just like a bike, and a compact engine tucked nicely at the bottom. Weighing in at around 88 pounds, it was easy to ride, easy to store, and even easy to pedal if you ran out of fuel. This wasn't about speed or power, it was about accessibility. Under the hood, or more accurately, under the seat, the Ciao packed a 49cc air-cooled two-stroke engine producing about 1.4 horsepower. That may not sound like much, but it was enough to reach speeds between 18 and 25 miles per hour. Later models introduced a variator transmission, giving riders smoother acceleration, while the belt-driven system made the bike quieter and lower maintenance than chain-driven competitors. Fuel economy? Impressive. Riders could see over 100 miles per gallon, making it incredibly cheap to run. The Ciao wasn't just simple. It was cleverly designed. The fuel cap doubles as a measuring cup for mixing two-stroke oil. The enclosed drive chain kept dirt and grease away from riders. And the minimal electronics meant fewer things could break. It was a machine built with real-world use in mind. In the 1970s and 80s, the Ciao became more than transportation. It became a symbol. Across Italy and much of Europe, it represented freedom for young riders. For many, it was their first taste of independence. It also developed a cult following in tuning and racing communities. Its simple engine made it perfect for modification, and enthusiasts quickly pushed its limits far beyond factory specs. Over the years, Piaggio released several versions of the Ciao, including the Ciao L, the Ciao PX, the Super Comfort or SC, and the Ciao Mix, which introduced automatic oil injection. Each brought small improvements, but the core concept stayed the same. The Piaggio Ciao proves that you don't need complexity to make an impact. It wasn't fast, it wasn't flashy, but it was reliable, efficient, and accessible, and that made it unforgettable. Even today, it lives on in garages, collections, and custom builds around the world. So next time you see one, remember, you're not just looking at a moped. You are looking at a piece of history. Well, what do you guys think about that? Pretty interesting little toy, isn't it? So, this is Bradford's Vespa Ciao. His sister-in-law saw this at the farm, fell in love with it, so he wants to get it running and give it to her. Honestly, I don't know anything about these. Never worked on one before. But it's a two-stroke, 49cc pedal power beast. It really can't be that difficult. Just looking over it, a couple things I see right off the bat. We've got some damage to the rear. We could probably get that remounted. The front wheel is not connected on this side of the fork. That's fine. I can smell the deck stain in the gas tank from your house, so we'll just save that for later. Some damage from it probably laying outside or falling over. Bent here, but we've got front brake, no, rear brake. That's a rear brake. Front brakes over here, they seem like they are working. It's got a throttle that the cable is definitely stuck. Ooh, speedo. Oh, I forgot about that. What does it say? 40. I don't believe it. Got the key in the center. This is a weird looking key. So it's just like a little shaft there. And unlock it, and you see the two little tabs up here, and that's what clicks in and allows you to turn it on. Cool. Got it strapped down the front here so his wheel's free in the back. Oh, okay. Well, I think it has compression. So how this works, if you've never seen one of these before, is you pedal along normal, you're good to go, but you're getting lazy or you want to go 40 miles per hour. You lift this little lever back here, lock in your centrifugal clutch, your belt in here, and up on the handles there's a little decompression lever. Goes right into the head, and it looks like that is functioning. There we go. And you can start pedaling. Hit your ignition switch on, turn your fuel on, and get up to speed, get going, and then you let out the decompression lever, and you should start. Oh, there we go. Okay. And you start getting compression, and it should pop start it like you would if you popped the clutch on a car. It feels like that clutch is slipping a little bit though. I'm only getting compression sometimes. Okay, we'll take a look into that. Where to start, I guess. Well, I guess if I'm not spinning the engine over, then I probably need to start with that clutch first so we can grab it, so I can actually spin the motor to see if we have spark. I don't know what kind of ignition system this has. I don't know if it's points or if it's just a little stator and generator deal in there. I don't know. I'll have to get in there and look, or I could probably Google that, but I'm lazy, so I'd rather just figure it out on my own. That makes it more fun. Well, let's get in here and see what's going on. I'm going to jump right into this thing because I want to get it going. I'm excited. Sometimes it's just the little things in life. Okay, that's easy. All right, what do we got here? So we've got a little belt drive. Goes up to a centrifugal clutch right there. It is very corroded, so this little lever, this little button right here, locks up this pulley, which then will spin the clutch. But when I push that button in, that pulley doesn't spin. When I release it, boom, it locks up this pulley and it starts to spin the motor. So it spins in a clockwise direction on this side. Now, yeah, it looks like it's trying to grab, but then it slips up. I don't know. Let's use some brake cleaner for once for what it's actually supposed to be used for. Oh, yeah, that looks beautiful in there. That is a lot of soot and schmutz coming out of there. Well, this might need to be cleaned up a little better. I don't think the centrifugal is centrifugaling. Oh. Okay, let's pull that cover off there. Take this thing apart and then realize that I don't know how it goes back together. And spend 40 years trying to learn Italian. What the? That's a 17, it looks like. What in the world? Oh. Ooh. Never gonna see that again. I would say that that's probably broken. All right, I think these are probably stuck and not expanding. So let me get you in here and show you what I'm talking about. All right, centrifugal clutch, I don't know if you know how it works, but basically as this spins, it creates a force that sends these clutches outward to lock in the plates, in turn driving the crankshaft. So what I think is happening is these are all kind of corroded in here. You see pretty nasty that when you're spinning this, these things, they aren't expanding. They aren't going outward to lock onto the back side of this drum right here. And that'll go in there, and you see that little notch. Easier to see on the back side. How it's notched to match the crankshaft. So when that locks into there, this will spin, and fun things happen, and the crankshaft spins. Let's go ahead and pop that off and see if we can't get that figured out. All right, so let's go ahead and pull this all apart. Now these, I don't know what the service life is on these things, you know. I mean, they look like they still have enough life on them that something should happen. That's pretty dirty. You look in the back here. Look how rusty that is. That's where that shaft is supposed to spin. So maybe it's getting too much resistance and it's just not spinning fast enough to get those clutches to expand. So I'm going to go ahead and pull all this out, clean it all up really well, and get some grease in there and see if that makes a difference. That might work. Sometimes you don't just have to, you know, rebuild the whole thing. All right, another clip. They love these things. All right. What is all in here? A washer. Ooh. All right. Oh, needle bearings. Yay. They're dry as a desert. Who knows how many years of nasty brake dust or clutch dust is on that. I don't know. These are pretty bad. These might just need to be replaced. That could be the issue. And perhaps we go online and see if I can't find parts. These are pretty popular things, just not here in the US. I mean, I'm sure there's, you know, a bunch around, but you don't see them very often. So I don't think there's going to be a big US market for stuff. Well, let's get some grease in there. Go ahead and blow out any junk and gunk in there. Blow needle bearings all over the place. They are in a cage, so that's good. Ooh, they're spinning really nicely now. Good. All right. I don't know. I guess we probably need to be careful. No, there's a rubber seal in here. I'm sure it's no good, but we don't want obviously that grease to be able to get out in this surface, or the clutches won't grab. But it was really dry in the back there, and like I said, I have a feeling that it just wasn't able to spin enough and maintain a velocity because it was just being held up by all that rust. I'm sure that I'm completely wrong about that, but whatever. That spins way, way better. Will that be the solution? No. Can I hope that it's the solution? Absolutely. Am I setting myself up for a letdown? Yeah. Yeah, I am. That looks pretty good in there. There we go. Okay, so I greased up everything in here and I cleaned all this, and I can definitely tell when you go to spin it, you can see it expanding there. You see that? I think we need to go ahead and bust into the carb. I'm going to pop off this other side cover. I already took the petcock off. Oop. And the fuel nozzle had busted off. So this line is all dry rotted and hardened. So get down to the carb. We'll go ahead and take off this little plate, which is the mount plate for that flat, the deck there. Make sure we do not lose these. It's pretty wild. I was looking up a bunch of stuff online and saw how many websites were devoted to kind of hot rodding these things out. And I think that's awesome. There is no reason you can't make something fast. It doesn't matter if it's not supposed to be. Sometimes making slow things go fast is way more fun than making fast things go fast. I'm just saying. All right. It's like a kid's music toy. You blow into there and sounds come out. So number one thing I always do is take the carb apart when we have something that's sat forever. And when I pulled this out, I definitely smelled varnish. There's varnish fuel in here. So I guarantee you the carb is going to be full of that. So rather than trying to really get it going before we even bother, Might as well just pull the carb out. And I think this one is pretty sticky. I'm going to go ahead and get this out of here and throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner. This is what I'm playing with down here. I got the carburetor set up. Looks like a little 8 mil. We'll unbolt the carb, comes out, and your throttle cable comes down and runs that. And then this is your choke. Pretty easy setup. All right, well, that's in there simmering. I went ahead and put some acetone in the tank. Tank's in pretty good shape on the outside. Doesn't look like any rust holes, but though it was dry, it smelled like varnish inside. So if you didn't know on this whole piece right here, the front of the frame is the fuel tank. Filled that up, and look at the deliciousness that's coming out of there. So we're going to let that dribble all the way through. Hopefully it's sitting in there. It's getting rid of all that extra sediment. And we'll get that blown out as I splash it in my face hole. And then that'll be ready to take some clean fuel into the nice new clean carburetor. Maybe. All right, ding, fries are done. It's going to be a little hot when you go, but look at that. Float needle came loose. There you go. Push a little pin out of the side here and get that float out of there. Now, this float looks like it's got some sort of rubberized coating on it or plastic coating, and the bottom had been eaten away. I'm not really sure. We'll let this dry up and harden back up. See what that is. That just might be old dry fuel and oil. So we'll scrape that off of there, but we can always throw this in a thing in a little cup of gas and make sure that it floats. That looks like it started loosening up some of that scum. I think we're going to go ahead and put this back in there for a little while. Yeah, look at that. Now the slide opens. Sweet. Jet at the bottom here. There we go. Look at that. So that made life a little easier. Throw it in the cleaner for a while. There we go. I think I'm going to go ahead and throw the whole assembly back in for a little bit longer. Same thing with that float bowl. You see it loosen this up a little bit, but there's still a gummy substance down in here. Look at that. It's like caramel. Yeah. Throw this needle and the jet. Put that all back down. And we'll keep it running. Bottoms up. All right, got the carb out of the cleaner. Everything looks pretty good there. Blew it all out, got all the nasty out of the ports. And a little trick, if you haven't seen this before, to clean out the needle seat, since this doesn't have a removable one. So I like to take a drill, stick a Q-tip in there, a little bit of metal polish. I use Brasso. Works pretty well. And just put that on the drill. Right in the port there and just let it clean itself. Move in and out. Let's see how dirty that gets already, how black that is. You can go ahead and polish up that seat. Get all the contaminants out of there. And then that biting tip should seal it up a lot better now. And I don't know if you can see down in there, probably not, but nice shiny looking clean seat for that needle assembly. right, let's get this clutch back together. First, you're going to have this washer with the neck on it. Slide that in. Go ahead and put the belt over. Now this could be a little tight. All right, starter clutch goes in next. You've got this little kind of lock tab. Let's slide over and sit on the pins, and then snap ring. Put it on there and listen for the snap. Okay, good. I went ahead and grabbed the new clutch because if you look at the pads on these, they are worn all the way down and you can actually see holes in them. They've gone all the way through. So that's pretty much junk. And these springs are all stretched out. It's really self-explanatory. It's a little triangle in there and boom, they pop back on, these little bicycle link looking things. They're just going to slide over there and make sure that you have these detent balls up. And then we slide our clutch assembly right back in. Now remember, one side is flat. That's got to line up with the flat side on the crankshaft, obviously. And then it'll sit all the way in. Once it sits all the way in, make sure that everything's seated properly. And then we'll just zip it down until I get one click out of it, and boom. There we go. Well, the good news is we got it running. The bad news is when I shut it off, I went to start it again and it wouldn't start, and then I found out I had zero spark. I did have a nice strong spark to start, so I don't know what happened there. I ended up going back into it, checking out wiring, looking at the points, trying to clean those. I went through up and down, in and out, all over the place until I finally found a really good wiring diagram. I'm going to show you that right here. You can pause it. It might be able to help you out. Now, in that diagram, what you're going to see is there's a blue wire that comes out of the engine, out of the flywheel, where the coil is. And that's going to hook up to two blue wires that split. One goes up to the normally open horn switch, and one goes back to the normally closed tail light. Well, there's notes that you'll find just searching the internet that say if these wires aren't hooked up, or if a light bulb goes out or something weird happens, you might lose spark. Well, surprise, I don't even have a taillight hooked up at all. And I think what happened was this blue wire that's back here was just resting against ground when I was trying to start it earlier. And when I had it running, it kind of popped off, and that's when it died. I also hit the brake switch up here, and every time I'd hit the brake, it would ground out and would shut the engine off immediately. So I went through and I cleaned up a bunch of stuff there. So once I kind of figured out that there was definitely a wiring issue, I went in here and I cleaned up all the grounds, which is a big thing. And I'm going to show you here in just a second what I found on that. And went back through and I pulled off the cap for the spark plug, and I put that directly against metal, and I rotated it, and I got this very, very, very weak spark there. So I knew the coil was doing something at that point. I thought maybe the coil's bad, but it's understood that these coils really don't go bad very often. That they last pretty much the life of the bike is what they'll tell you. That's what the Haynes manual says as well. That's not always necessarily true, but this one had been inside and protected. It wasn't all wet and nasty, so I don't know. Anyway, once I saw that little bit of spark, I went back in and I opened up the cover. If you pop that off, it's just a little rubber grommet, a little plug. And with the opening facing the cylinder head, you're going to see the points right there. All right, to adjust those points, you're going to see a little flathead screw right here. You take that screw and just loosen it ever so slightly. Just above that, you'll find another place that you can fit a flathead kind of vertically, and you can use that to open and close the points a little bit. Now, the manual calls for 0.3.5 to about 0.4 or so millimeter. I use a 0.356 feeler gauge, and I got in there and I adjusted those points till this slides in. I can feel a little bit of tension, but not so much that I am spreading the gap on that. I did that, tightened everything back down. Voila, I had beautiful spark. It was jumping an arc from a mile away. So check little stuff like that, but I want to show you something else that I found which is really important, and that's your grounds. All right, let's take a look at the motor mount right here, and you see that sparking and arcing all over the place. Obviously, I don't have the nut on there, but when that's loose and your grounds are loose and you're not making good contact and the bolts are stripped, look at that, arcing all over the place. And it's going to make it run like crazy. And look at that, as soon as it popped off, oh, man, I wish I had that on there. It popped off, and guess what? It lost ground and died. So that's something to think about. Go around and check your grounds before you drive yourself nuts looking for components. That bounced around, and as soon as that bolt fell in there, it died. Very, very important. I know that seems so simple, but people stress themselves out, freaking out over components and other things like that, when it's simple things like grounding. Grounding can cause so many issues. Now, I went in here. See that bolt is a 5-inch bolt that goes all the way through, and one end was stripped. So I went in and I rethreaded it, tightened it back up, and I got a really good ground. You see it's not arcing all over the place. And listen to how smoothly it's running. Now, I do have the idle turned up a little bit right now, so I'm going to adjust that. And she fires at the second that I crank that drill on there. So I think once we get these pedals going, we're not going to have any problems getting this thing to fire up. Now, the wiring on these is pretty simple, but I want to go over it really quick for everybody so they know that it's not that difficult. Inside here, you have the flywheel. Behind the flywheel, you have coils. You have one coil that runs your ignition. The other one will run your headlight and your tail light. On this model, I have turn signals. All right, these turn signals are run by a 6-volt battery. And this is just a half-drained 12-volt, but I hooked it up to see if I can get any love out of there. And they will run that circuit. Coming out of the coils, you have this purple wire. That purple wire is going to connect and go all the way down to your coil. Down at the coil, there is one terminal coming out of this coil. And there's a dual spade connector that allows the other wire to be hooked up to that as well. This wire is what's going to go up to your kill switch. So that's going to ground out your system there. That wire comes back up to the main harness, up into here, and then runs through and goes all the way up to your switch. All right, so that blue wire comes up here, and it goes to the dual splice wires here, or the two blue wires I was talking about. One goes to the horn, and then one goes to the brake light switch. And then there is a ground right here, chassis ground, or an engine ground, that is on this copper lug that sticks off and has a tab. This goes right into your main harness. Going to make sure that's hooked up as well. That's pretty much it. Really simple. Nothing crazy to that. This one is what you need to make sure it runs. This one's going to mess with your lights. It's going to take care of your lighting and your brake light. So make sure these terminals are all clean. Nothing's eaten up in here. Nothing's jacked up and messed up. Make sure that your coil is mounted to a good ground. So get in here and clean up the bolt surface, the mating surface, where the bolt goes on the lower and the upper mount. And then there's another bolt, this rear bolt, 10 millimeter. Get in there and clean that up, clean the thread, clean the oil. and the mating surface here, and tighten that up. Once you get all those good solid grounds, you'll notice a huge difference in the way that thing runs. Now, I don't have a puller, although I did order one, but it turns out I didn't need to replace the points. So I'm not going to pull that apart right now because I don't have that puller. But there's a tool you can get it for really cheap. Amazon sells it. There's a bunch of different places, $15 or so. And it's a special puller that has threads on, a tube that slides over. You thread it in here, and then a bolt goes in the back and presses against the outer side of this stud, and it'll allow you to pull that flywheel right. Another important thing to check is your plug cap over here. Now these will be threaded onto this cable, screwed, I should say. Inside here, there's a little screw tip, so you can pull that all apart and check to see that those wires aren't too torn up in there. If need be, you can cut back a little bit on the plug wire and give it something fresh to kind of dig into. But you can screw that on. Not a bad idea. All in all, not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and button this back up. I am going to clean up some of these terminal connectors. I'm going to put, this one is missing the case. These come with an outer cover that'll snap over it. I'm missing one of those, so I'm going to put a better insulated terminal connector on there so we don't arc out on anything. And really that's it. Once I do that, we'll button it back up and see about fixing this front suspension. Oh yeah! All right, that popped off nice and easy. Let's move on to fixing some of the other problems. All right, and this taillight section, we got to figure something out here. We'll go ahead and pop that off. Once we bolt all this down, we'll see if we can't bend the turn signals back up into place. He did do it. Anyway, we're all about safety here at Tank Slap TV. So I went online and I found myself a 6-volt tail light. Amazingly enough, it's the only one that I could find. And look at that. The bolt holes line up perfectly. The other one was oval like that. It's not perfect, but I mean, it's a pretty good match. But it looks good. I'm going to have to get in here and figure out the wiring. I have that wiring diagram. But I want to get on the front fork. Let me bring you up here and show you this. Now, I'm not really sure what happened here, but the left side is unbolted from the fork, which has been causing the wheel to sit like that. And it actually bent the frame. You can see that. It bent the fork. Here's what I'm fighting with. This is how the bike's been sitting for however long. And it's actually jammed in there. As simple as that looks, it's wedged in there. But I think if I can back the nut off, it should free it up enough. You'll notice here too, for the speedometer, there's a hole in the wheel. This is popped out, so it's going to spin with it. Obviously, the speedo wouldn't have been working at that point in time. There we go. So remember when I went to take this apart, this stud was up over top and jammed in there, and the wheel was tweaked. And then this was all bent up. Well, once I got that straightened out, I realized that this fork is toast. It must have got whacked. Look how crooked that is. So, we got a new one. Well, unfortunately, here in the States, it's pretty hard to find parts, especially a good quality used fork that wasn't too beat up and ugly looking. However, I was able to get online and find from EBR Racing a brand new Piaggio Ciao front fork assembly, factory style. So I like this one because it's chrome, because if I would have bought any other used ones, I couldn't find one in gray anyway, and they all needed to be painted. So at least putting chrome on here will match the fender and the handlebars, and it won't look awkward. The fact that it says EBR Racing on the side might, but that's cool. We're going to go ahead and throw this on, and hopefully we can take this thing for a little spin now that I won't die while trying. We'll see. So we're under a severe thunderstorm watch right now, and a tornado watch. And I just got the warning for the tornado watch to hide in the basement. And I was confused because I was like, do you want me to hide or do you want me to watch a tornado? What do you think, Spencer? Did you want to watch a tornado?
Yeah.
My little one's out here with me, seeing all the cool lightning outside. But this should be straightforward. Pop off the top, the handlebars, the wiring. We can probably set that aside. Unscrew it almost like a bicycle up top at the neck. Pop that out. We'll check out these bearings, most likely re-grease those. Slide everything back together and reassemble it. I think the biggest part is the shock assembly, the forks down here. We're going to have to transfer all that stuff over to the new set. So let's go ahead and get that done. right, now that I've pulled out every single tool in the world, I didn't really show you that because it was pretty ugly. It's the first time I've ever done these. That was a pain in the butt. I don't know if there's a trick. I should have looked it up, but I figured it out on my own. But it was all just leverage and prying and figuring out a way to get that spring to compress. These two 10mm bolts hold the back of the spring, and then this has to kind of compress and go down so you can line up the bushing and get the bolts in. It was not very pretty, so yeah. Before you go to put this back on, remember you need to get this collar. This is the bearing collar. Needs to go on the new one. Then you got the bearing. It should sit with the flat side up. So the bearings sit in the little race. Good. And then we'll get that back on the bike. All right, new fork, new front rubber. Look at this race tire. Ooh. Looking pretty good. Straight. Now we have to tackle the rear. Because in inspecting this, I found we've got broken spokes. It's warped. It's getting caught up as I spin. And then I found, look, there's a bunch of broken spokes over here too. So I found a used wheel. I think the rim on this one is bent. I'm going to go ahead and bust that out, show it up today, and see if we can't swap this out and get the new tire on that one. All right, so we'll pop these two bolts off, and they are holding it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, loosens it up. That side of the frame. Hum-da-dum-bum-bum. And taking off the wheel. Oh, yep. And then it wants to go straight down. Okay, well, now. Ow. Really? Why didn't you tell me you needed to take the exhaust off? Yeah, I love the fact that they make all sorts of performance parts for this. They have exhaust systems. Oh, I was looking at those. Man, I was really tempted. Okay. Look at that. All right. Presents. Let's see. Because this one is set up a bit differently. I'll show you what I mean. So this is the only one I could find on eBay in the States at all. And the big difference is you see this big clutch here. This is a centrifugal clutch. They refer to it as a variator. Now the way that works is on the variator model, instead of having the centrifugal clutch up front like ours has, it has the pulley there, goes back in here and allows this to do the gearing and adjust as your speed adjusts. And it's supposed to be better actually from what I've read. However, I don't have the pulley set up and everything to be able to do that up front. So for right now, the wheel is what I need. I'm going to take all this apart. I'm going to save it. It all needs to be cleaned and probably rebuilt anyway. So once I do that, I'll put it in a box, and maybe later down the road, if it is a better one, we'll swap it out. But for now, I'm hoping that maybe I can just get this set up working with the old style, non-variating. All right, so that variator, or the centrifugal clutch, came off relatively straightforward. Set that aside, and I'm going to actually take that part put it in the parts washer, get it all cleaned up, sandblast it, paint it, and set it aside because maybe down the line we'll use it. I need 10s here. I think maybe I can get in here and this shaft. Maybe I can swap, if I take this apart, I can swap the old shaft out of this one and put it on that one. I don't know. Or take the whole hub assembly out. Everything else looks the same. Ew. So what if the shaft is right here? Let's take apart that one and see if the shaft on the inside looks the same. And maybe I can just swap those. Of course, I'm not prying that hard because I don't want to mar it all up. There we go. Okay. Well, that one's different. So alright, so the internals on these are definitely different. You can see the size of that shaft, and this one's right there. Well, I guess we're going to just have to get creative now. So let's settle this side. Well, I think I figured it out. So to get this hub out, I need to get the sprocket off of the other side. Right here, and then this whole assembly will allow to slide out the opposite end, if that makes any sense. Now, I found some videos and some tricks about taking like a freewheel part tool and grinding down two edges and sticking on these two little notches here. But right back here, there's a nut. So if you don't have thin wrenches like this, service wrenches, you can get them at Harbor Freight. I think it's $50, no, $60 for the whole set. This has a 36 millimeter in it. You sit there with that other part tool and try and get in here and twist it. Most likely you're going to strip and bust your knuckles or do something stupid. This is a nice easy wrench. Get on here and boom. And that was rusted. Now I did throw a bunch of PV blaster and things like that on it. But that broke free really easily. I was not expecting that. Yes. All right. And it looks like there's a little washer on the bottom. And let's pray that there's nothing else. Yes. Okay. You know, harder than it should be sometimes. It's pretty grimy in there where the brake shoe goes. So I'm going to get in there with some rust killer. Clean that up. And we'll put this back together, get it back on, and maybe a test ride? I found this stuff works pretty good. We'll get in here and just get a good coat. Let that sit for about 10, 15 minutes or so. We'll see what happens. All right, this is the other wheel. This freewheel on here is a lot nicer than the other one, so I think I want to keep this one. So again, 36. Oh, see, that one's on there a little tighter. Boom. I couldn't imagine trying to do that on those two little notches. You know, sometimes it is worth it just to go get the right tool for the job. Will be useful. It's not an ad, that's just a suggestion to save yourself a headache. I don't know why I put that away. I guess I'm going to need it to tighten it back on, but whatever. Don't judge me. Well, let's go ahead and get this back together now. Okay, I got it all cleaned out in there. All that rust and goop. We will start by... There's two washers on each side of the spring. Two thin washers, so make sure those are there. Slide that back in. Oh, nope. Let's not forget the best part. This one. There we go. All right. Now I can go ahead, slap that guy back on. Pull my wrench out for a second time. All right. 36. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Boom. Ooh. All right. Now, maybe we can make this thing do what it's supposed to do. All right. We have large gear goes in. Plop. And this now should be able to sit in the bearing carrier with that washer there. Now there's no gasket. I mean, that whole gasket was kind of worthless. So let's clean this up, and I think we can get away with a little bit of room temperature vulcanization. RTV, for those of you who know it by its nickname. All right. Have a little ultra black. It'll work just fine. Go down to the craft store. I get these little paintbrushes, and I like to, instead of just gooping it on, this gives you that fine little coat versus getting all that excess with your finger and smearing it on there. I only do that on certain things, but it's really good for keeping that layer of RTV that presses through from breaking off and then bounding up in your gears. So if I'm doing things that involve turbos, that's a big one because RTV is a turbo killer. But if you have to use it, it's a good way to just get on the littlest amount possible. Also, little narrow spots like this where I have no room between the gear and that. This is a great way to do it. Yeah, I mean, I can take the gear off, but I don't want to. So there's that. Plus, it keeps your fingers clean. But I do find when you do this, you get a nice even amount in there. Remember, this is the transmission, they call it, for this. So it will have gear oil in there. What type? I don't know yet. I didn't Google that. And very simply line this back up. You'll know when it's lined up because it'll be lined up. You know what I'm saying? All right, it looks like what Piaggio recommends is an 80-90. So we're going to do the 80-90 Lucas, probably the best one I could find down there at the store. We don't have a lot of good selections like that on the shelf, but 80-90 Lucas, I like it. Really, I think from what I found, 60 to 65 milliliters. Or really, the reality is, with this level on the bike, this is your fill plug right here. You fill it until it starts to drain out the hole. So it's got to be level with that. Kind of just like a lot of car diffs and stuff like that. But I figure while I have it off, it'll be easier to put the oil in. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put this level, and I'll fill it just like that. So just put it upright. Now remember, this drive sits level with the frame, so I think that's pretty much what it would sit like if it was on the bike. Now hopefully, oh. Alright, now we just got a slow drip coming out, so that tells me we're level with that hole. And we'll go ahead and seal her back up. Nice. Boop. Alright, we're full of gear oil. Looking good there. Get that pretty level. It's not coming out anywhere, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and get this back on the scooter. I'm sorry, the moped. And we're one step closer. Alright. Oh, wait. Huh. I can't start it without that. Ow. Ha. Okay. I've got all the power strapped down to the chassis. Switch on. Brush and lever in. Pedal. Whoa! What is that? Oh, that noise is the I was like, what the heck is that? That's just the vibration into the lift. Move! Get out the way! Nope. Oh, the turn signals won't be on because I don't have a battery. How about a headlight? That might be burnout. Oh, she runs good. Look at that. Wow, smooth. I like it.
Well, here we go. We're about to try out the Piaggio Ciao on its new slicks and street tires. See what she does. I'm actually kind of excited about this. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, here we go. Possibly my new favorite motorcycle. Well, there we go. Another one rescued from the dumps. We're not going to let that go to the scrapyard. That thing is too cool. Such a fun little machine. So Brad's sister's going to love that. And if she doesn't, I'm going to get it back from her because I want to do a lot of upgrades to it. But you never know. I might convince her to want to do them when we bring it back here and super on up. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you tuning in. If you really like what you saw today, please subscribe. Click that like button. It's free. I ain't charging you anything. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. So until next time, keep it on two wheels. And if not, I ain't going to tell anybody. Thanks for tuning in.